got to believe that for all the martyrs that have died, because there's been thousands upon thousands of burning oil, put on a stake, hung upside down, all that stuff, crucified, that comfort's still there.
Thanks for tuning in to The Implanted Word with Pastor Bill Gim of Grace Church in Amarillo, Texas. Stay tuned after this broadcast to find out how you can get a copy of this message or other messages in this series. Yesterday, we started the 3rd chapter of Daniel, and today we finished that message. So let's join Pastor Bill for today's Implanted Word.
You know, I went to Bible college and I learned all this stuff about graven images, even if it's out of heaven. You don't bow down to graven images. You don't. And I went to a really good church in Colorado. The church where I got saved, huge church. Back then it was the largest church in Colorado altogether. So I go to Bible college for a year and I come back. I'm in the college group now, and they had college group down in the basement, 300-400 kids in college group. And down there in the basement of my church, this was my church. They had this picture of Jesus, bigger than our screen there. Huge. You know the picture, you know what I'm talking about? Did you know that's a graven image? And they had this huge picture of Jesus. Now, it's one thing to have a picture of Jesus hanging somewhere in your house. I'm not talking about that. But let me tell you, if you get on your knees and you start praying to the picture of Jesus, that's a graven image right out of heaven. Now, I know there's people that don't know any better. I knew better. I just came back from Bible college. And I'm looking at it thinking, graven image. And people, they were on their face. They were on their knees. And they're praying to a picture. You can't put my Jesus on print. He's bigger than that. You can't bring him down to a statue or put him on your dashboard. He's bigger than that. I have to make a decision. You have to know that my mom and my brother and my sisters, this was our church, but I'm looking at it and I talked to the pastor and the youth pastor, and then finally, I'm going to find another church. It broke my heart. That was 29 years ago. That church is nothing today. Used to be one of the top churches in the country. Did that bring it down? Oh, I don't think that all by itself, but that was one thing that caused me to leave. You see, it's those little things that we think, well, maybe if I just kind of tie my shoes, nobody will know. Hey, my very best friend in high school was a guy named Phil Meany. And he was marrying this girl and wanted me to be in his wedding, and by religion, he's Catholic. Okay. Well, you're my friend, and I want to be in your wedding kind of thing. Well, what do we do? Well, you're going to have this deal and go through rehearsal. Well, I find out that part of the deal is you got to do this little bow thing. I have to do a little bow thing, huh? Phil, we need to talk. I know everybody in your church. I know it's just, I know, but you see that statue and all the stuff, and I can't tie my shoes. I can't do the little bow thing. I can't pretend. So Phil, if you don't want me there, that's fine, But you need to know that if I'm in the wedding thing, I ain't bowing. I'm not hinting. I ain't going to just nod at the right time. I'm just going to stand there. He said, okay. Do you hear what I'm saying? You think it's just these 3 guys in Daniel 3? No. It's how we deal, how we live within the church and religions and people that, they got all these idols hanging everywhere on their cars and around their neck and all the stuff going on, and they really think that's it, right? No. My Jesus is bigger than all of that. So I don't want to act like I'm on a crusade to rip all this stuff. I'm not. But I catch you praying to it, I'm coming for you. Okay? And if you catch me praying to that stuff, come get me. Or doing these little bows or these little, No. It's idolatry. Now, Bill, are you really sure? Well, in case you didn't pick it up, just write down Exodus chapter 20, verses 3 through 6, and read it for yourself, even if it's right out of heaven. Back to our story. Okay, they say it doesn't matter, just go ahead and burn us, but we're not bowing. Love you, Neb. Verse 19, boy, he's really ticked off now, because it's not the astrologers accusing, they're not gonna. Verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered. Don't you love the Bible? I mean, right there, that is just funny, because I don't know what Nebuchadnezzar looked like, but I know what his face looked like. I mean, he's just so mad at these guys that he can't contain himself. Here's the head of gold, the greatest king ever in the Gentile kingdoms, and he's just so ticked off that his facial expression, verse 19, was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. He's lost it. By the way, that's not even smart. First, you're going to have to pay for all that extra wood or coal or whatever you're heating the thing with. That's just going to cost you more money. Plus, if you really want to get these guys, you want them to have a slow death, you know. You're going to have that thing so hot, they're not going to feel nothing, you know. So there again, see, when you fall into anger and wrath, you don't think right. That's why one thing you learn from tonight, when you find yourself angry or wrathful, stop. Don't do nothing. Or else you'll be heating something up 7 times, and it's not even necessary. Makes a great part for our story, though, right? Well, anyways, his face is all messed up 7 times hotter. Verse 20, and he commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers and their coats and their caps and their other clothes, and they were cast into the midst of the burning fire. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There again, he took his best soldiers, bind them in all their clothes, bind them and carry them up there and throw them in. Well, he lost those guys. They were killed. There again, because of anger, because of wrath. Man, it's costing you for the fuel. It's costing you with the guys throwing them in. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. I wonder what that really felt like. There again, they didn't know the end of the story. And we're not going to bow. And God can deliver us if he wants to. But if it doesn't, kind of like Job, even though he slay me, I'm still going to love him. So whatever you want to do, Nebuchadnezzar, you're still the king, but we're not going to bow. He goes off and the fire gets hotter and the soldiers come up. And you know how soldiers act or cops act or people act when all of a sudden there's the king and he's so angry. You need to know they probably weren't gently tied up. Okay, put out your hands and let me bind them a little bit. Put them down to your side. And man, they grab these guys and they're binding them up and they're mad and they're tying those knots tight and all that stuff. And then they're hoisting them up. And I don't know how many. Was it 1 guy per 1 guy? That's probably a couple guys or maybe 3 guys carrying up this bundle of a man. You got 3 groups of those guys. And you're inside that thing going, well, I guess I'm going to heaven. Time to sing a song. Lord, I'm trusting you. Man, I can hear that roar of that furnace. It's really loud. Think we're getting close. The band's not playing anymore. What's those screams? And you don't know. It's the screams of the guys carrying you up there. And they're dying, and off you go. And I don't know how big the furnace is. I know it's big enough that 4 guys can walk around and you can look in, so it's fairly good size. But, whatever that is, they hoist you over and down you go, and you're just waiting for the heat, just waiting for the heaven. Catch this. The blessing was not that they walked out. The blessing was that they were thrown in. Jesus is in the fire. Where do you want to be? You want to be with the world? You want to be with Jesus. Jesus is with the faithful. Jesus is with the obedient. You're about to have one of the greatest stories in your Bible. What kind of life you want to live? I want to somehow be like those guys, Lord. Even if the world hates me and beats me up and tries to kill me. Now, catch this too. They didn't know they were coming out. They didn't know that. You don't always come out. Most of the guys don't come out. Remember Acts chapter 12? James gets killed. Peter gets free. What's the deal, Lord? That was my story for James. That was my story for Peter. These three guys get out. Others were sawn asunder, and they stayed asunder. God knows the best way to do your story. That's his part. Our part is just obedience. We know what we shouldn't be doing. We know what we shouldn't be eating. We know what we shouldn't be watching. We know what we shouldn't be bowing for. We know what we shouldn't be compromising. So let's just be like these guys. And if they throw us in the fire, let's find out what God's story is for me and for you. Off they go. They fell into the midst of the furnace, a blazing fire, still tied up. Verse 24, then Nebuchadnezzar the king, I love that it starts with him. Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He responded and said to his high officials, was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said to the king, certainly, O king. He answered and said, look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods. Woo! I gave myself goosebumps, but it wasn't my preaching. It's a great story in the Bible. I mean, there's your biggest enemy. You've tried to help him, you've tried to promote him, you've read his dreams, and you prayed over him, and then he throws you in the fire. And he's astonished that while you're in the fire, you're walking around. You've got somebody else with you. It actually looks like they're having a good time. It's not like they're trying to get out. What in the world is going on in there? You got 3 guys as a testimony. Here's what's going on. Rocking the world of their enemy. Hey, when your enemy puts the fire on you, how do you walk around? How do you look? How do you smell? That comes up in a little bit, okay? They're not even going to smell a smoke. What's the secret? Hey, Jesus is with me. I think that's the key verse, by the way, if you're keeping notes. I think verse 25, because I really think that the 4th one, it could be an angel, I understand that, but I really think it's a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. I think God himself met the 3 youths in the middle of the fire. For what purpose? Oh, to save them. But a bigger purpose, to get Nebuchadnezzar's heart. See, these guys are already saved. These guys are doing good. These guys are obedient. I mean, God could have just taken them to heaven. They're in great shape. Oh, but it's Nebuchadnezzar who we're trying to reach. The head of gold that went to his head, and he's making his statue. The guy's so lost. Everybody's mad at the Jews. Well, let's just use the Jews. Let's put them in the tribulation. Let's see what happens when they don't bow, they don't bend, and let's see what happens to Nebuchadnezzar. Wow. Look at them. Look at that. And God will allow the afflictions to come into your life to get the attention of your enemies, to look at you. But like we learned Sunday, his comfort will always supersede in abundance whatever affliction, whatever torment. You know, I just got to believe that for all the martyrs that have died, because there's been thousands upon thousands of burning oil, put on a stake, hung upside down, all that stuff, crucified. That comfort's still there. You know, I've read in Fox's Book of Martyrs where preachers, while they're dying, they just keep preaching the gospel. And we know about Stephen that, you know, he just kept praying, kept preaching while they're rocking him. in our flesh, we'd rock them back, you know. Shadrach, Meshach, in their flesh, they'd be throwing logs out at Nebuchadnezzar, you know. God's grace is an amazing thing. So watch me die. I hope I die. These guys didn't, but I hope I die in the same way. No compromise. We love you, King. Hope you get saved. Would you look at that? He answered, verse 25, and said, look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the fourth is like the Son of God. Listen to this quote. It's amazing to me. If you want to be with Jesus, get in the fire. If you want to be with Jesus, get in the fire. You that have been listening to my sermons the last week, for whatever reason, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, I only preached that one other time until this last Sunday, and that was for Jeff Gettner's funeral in this room 3 years ago. And the only other time I come up to 2 Corinthians chapter 1 was last Sunday. So there's the illustration. There sits Joe, and you heard that Sunday. The only other reference I have in my whole Bible to Jeff Gettner is right there on this page, written 3 years ago. If you want to be with Jesus, get into the fire. Joe Gettner gave me that from Jeff Gettner's Bible, 12 of 1999. I wonder what that means. I don't know, but both passages I've preached, Sunday, 4 days later, today, had something to do with Jeff. And I'm glad you're here, Joe. And from his Bible, I would say to you and to everybody here, if you want to be with Jesus, get in the fire. That's the blessing. Coming out, that's just a bonus. If you don't want to... Western and Plains is getting in the fire. Do you understand that? If you want to stay a nice little peaceful church, then stay here. If you want to get in the fire, let's go. Because it's all going to go up. I guarantee you it's going to go up. And I'm not talking about attendance or offerings. I'm talking about fire. I think it's where Jesus is, though. You know what I mean? Verse 26, Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God. Wasn't he just making fun of that earlier? Who can deliver you out of my hand? There's no God that's able. Our God is, and now he agrees. Notice he's calling them the Most High God, your God. He's not Nebuchadnezzar's God yet. We need one more chapter, one more bad story for this guy before their God becomes his God. It's really cool because he really does get converted, and now he's their God. You servants of the Most High God, and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around them and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on the bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their heads singed, nor was their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Man, everybody that was anybody's looking these three guys over. Talk about a testimony. God knows how to take your insignificant life and with the right set of circumstances that you just obey him, turn you into this great testimony. Everybody's looking at it going, wow, have you smelled him? Doesn't even smell of smoke. What's the deal? Check out those hairs on his arm. They're not even singed. What's the deal? And they're all wandering around scratching their head. Nebuchadnezzar's up there going, their God saved them. Their God saved them. Can you believe it? Their God saved them. All they did was obey. They got up that morning thinking, I wonder what today has in store. Oh, we're supposed to go to that party. Let's go. They get down there and everybody's there, and then the herald stands up, and I can see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego just looking at each other going, okay, I ain't bowing. You bowing? I ain't going to bow. You going to bow? I ain't going to bow. Okay, it's going to be a fun day. Next thing you know, everybody's making a big deal over them. What have they done? Just simply obeyed. Didn't preach a great sermon. Didn't even pass out the Jesus video. All they did was obey. Now everybody's sniffing them because God showed up in the fire. Verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command. That's a smart move for you guys. I can't believe you did it, but now I agree with you. And yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in such or in this way. Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon. It started with a decree by the king. It ends with a decree by the king. Their God is God, but he hasn't said my God yet. We'll have to drive him crazy for 7 years, but he'll say my God, and then he'll let everybody know his own testimony. Until then, he's bragging about their testimony. Just amazing. Amazing. One little side note. There will be another day when another king will set up another image. And with his false prophet, they'll bring that image to life and they will make everybody worship it. And if you don't worship the image, Revelation 13 and 14, then it's all over. There will be a remnant of people. There will be some Jews and some Gentiles who won't take the mark of the beast, nor will they worship the image of the beast. Part of their confidence, their energy, their counsel, their power will be from 3 Hebrew youths who's already faced the same kind of furnace. The Antichrist is coming. And there will be a remnant of Jews. There will be Jews who will not bend, they will not bow, and they will endure, and then they'll be saved. By the way, we don't know where Daniel was, do we? A lot of guessing. But did you know Daniel is one illustration, one type of the church? Guess what? The church ain't going to be around either when the Antichrist raises his image and says you need to bow. Just a little extra there. Can I prove it? Can't prove it. But it fits good enough that I can say, hey guys, there's going to be another king with another image, and he's going to be crazy too. But there's going to be a lot of Jews and Gentiles who don't receive that mark, nor do they worship. They're not going to bend, they're not going to bow. And they'll meet us in heaven, as we've already been spared from that. I just firmly see that in the scriptures. Part of that I'll be able to show you in Daniel when we get up into chapter 7 through 12. But in the meantime, your life, your obedience, the temptation to compromise, when everybody else is bowing, when everybody else is going with the flow, and then it's your best friend's wedding. It was your church. It's your family reunion where all of a sudden they start showing all those movies. You know what I'm talking about? And you don't watch those movies in your house, and you don't, and then all of a sudden, what do? You don't bend. You don't bow. Or all of a sudden at work, it's just everybody there around the water cooler, and they all laugh at those jokes. You don't bend. You don't bow. Well, everybody's making fun of the Jews. Come on, Bill. You don't bend. You don't bow. Think of all those brothers and sisters. All they had to say was, Caesar is God. That's all they had to say. But they wouldn't bend. And they wouldn't bow.
If you missed a portion of this message, you would like to hear it again, or you want to share it with someone, this message, as well as previous messages, can be found at theimplantedword.com. Here, you can also learn more about our ministry, how to donate, or follow our ministry on Facebook and Twitter. That address again is theimplantedword.com. We also invite you to download the Implanted Word's free app on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. This is your instant connection to the implanted Word. Be sure to join us here tomorrow as we explore more from the implanted Word.
You have called, I have come to the house of the Holy One. You are God, I will run to you.
The Implanted Word is listener supported and sponsored by Grace Church of Amarillo, Texas.